Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I have just about as long as it takes him to finish this bottle to be able to talk, and then he's going to be really noisy again. So I'll try to take advantage of the short period of time that I have to chat with you guys. So I thought I'd do this video today just talking about like my whole like pregnancy journey, I guess. So if that's not something you are interested in or whatever, you might as well click off. It's just something that I've watched a lot of YouTube videos about, at least when I was like trying to get pregnant, and then when I was pregnant, just like hearing other people's experiences, because like every pregnancy and every person like has a totally different experience. So I just thought I would share like kind of my story with how things went when I was pregnant with this little guy. I don't know the exact timeline, like I'm not gonna have like at this many weeks, like at 20 weeks this happened and at 22 weeks this happened. Like I didn't keep keep track of that super well, but I can give you like a rough idea. So basically this is the story. So my husband and I were trying to get pregnant. So it was 2020 when we decided we were going to try and get pregnant, and so we started that process in January. And the first couple of tries did not work out. Like the first couple of months we tried obviously weren't successful. And we were doing like the whole tracking, like, tracking my peak, fertility times and all that stuff. And even with that, it still didn't happen right away. So if you're out there like trying to get pregnant and you're like, why isn't it working? Like that's not abnormal. At least it wasn't for us. Like even with a significant amount of effort, like with tracking my period and tracking like ovulation and all that stuff, it still didn't happen right away. So that was a little bit frustrating at first. And I think looking back on some of my older videos in early 2020, I think that kind of came across like I was always talking about it because it was always on my mind, because I was always like, oh, maybe I'm pregnant now, and then it wasn't, and then it was depressing. And so that's how that felt for a little while. And then actually, basically it was in about like late February, early March, is when the whole pandemic thing really kicked off. Like everything started locking down. I think it was March that things started locking down, but people started talking about how serious it was a little bit before that. And so we kind of, at the time, we thought it was going to be more of a temporary situation. So we were kind of like, well, should we just wait? Should we just like hold off or whatever and pick this up again afterwards? And we sort of decided that we would not completely stop trying, but like just kind of like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't, kind of a mindset. So we weren't like going as hard, I guess, at the attempt. We weren't like doing the whole tracking like quite as seriously. We were kind of like, well, it's not probably the best time anyway because pandemic and blah blah blah. And that actually ended up being the month that I did get pregnant. So it was March that I got pregnant. I didn't find out that I was pregnant obviously until April, when I like missed my period. That's when I found out, but I guess the month that I would have like conceived would have been March. So yeah, I didn't really have any early symptoms. Like I wasn't nauseous and throwing up and all those things that you see on TV when people are like, oh, like the girl starts throwing up and then that's how she knows she's pregnant. Like it wasn't like that. I didn't really have any early symptoms. I just kind of like one day was like, oh, I'll just take a test just to see, and then it ended up being positive. So that's kind of how I found out. And then I made an appointment with the doctor, but because of the pandemic, like things were a little bit weird with appointments and stuff. Like they didn't want me to go in right away to like get a blood test to confirm the pregnancy or anything, because they didn't really want people coming in like for unnecessary stuff. So they were like, we're just gonna assume that it's like that you're pregnant. They were like, most of the time pregnancy tests aren't wrong. Like they're not wrong in the sense that they would say positive when you're not pregnant. Like you can get like false negatives, I guess, but false positives are a little bit more rare. So they were like, we're just gonna assume that you are pregnant, whatever, and come in at like 8 weeks. So I started going in for like regular appointments at like 8 weeks and whatever and blah blah blah. Everything was pretty much normal like for most of the beginning of my pregnancy. right? um, and then, like, I didn't really start showing super early, but then once I did start showing, like, I like really ballooned. Like, I got like really, really huge. I did have, like I mentioned in the last video, I did have really bad pregnancy acne. That's actually why I stopped making videos for a while, because it was to the point where like makeup wasn't covering it, and it wasn't even just about covering it. Like, I wouldn't be like super embarrassed or whatever to show that I have acne. Like, it's not a big deal. Lots of people get acne, but it was like I didn't even want to put anything on my face because I was worried that it was going to make it worse. Like, it was like my entire face was just, there was no smooth skin anywhere. It was just bumps everywhere. They weren't like humongous, like huge cystic pimple type things. They were more like just little tiny bumps, but like my entire face. So that was gross. And it, no matter what I did, it would not go away. I was washing my face like every single day, like twice a day, like morning and night. I was, not wearing any makeup, and it didn't seem to matter. Like, it was so bad. But then eventually at around, I would say 3 months pregnant, that kind of cleared up a little bit, and then it sort of went back to normal after that. But the first 3 months, my skin was just horrendous. So yeah, and then I guess between like 3 and 6 months pregnant, I did notice like I was having like really a lot of pregnancy cravings, specifically for like sugar, like pure sugar, like not even just like sweet things like cake and stuff. Like, I wanted like literally to eat like, like those pixie sticks that are literally just sugar in a tube, like stuff like that, like candy. Like, I wanted so much candy and sugar all the time. So that was weird. And then I would like I bought like a big 2-pound bag of like those rockets, like those candies, and I was just like eating those all the time, and it was crazy. And then I noticed like some weird stuff happening sometimes when I would eat all that sugar. Like, I would eat a bunch of sugar, and then I'd feel like my heart was like racing, and then I thought like that was a little bit weird. But whatever. I kind of ignored it. I don't know why. I just didn't think it was a big deal. I thought maybe I was just thinking I was feeling something that I wasn't really feeling. And yeah, so I started noticing stuff like that. I would notice like I would get like really, really tired a few hours after eating. Like, maybe not even a few hours, like 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours after eating a big meal. I would just like be so tired, like I could not even keep my eyes open. But again, like they say, like you're always tired when you're pregnant, so I just sort of thought that was normal and stuff. But then it turns out, like when I did my glucose test around 28 weeks, I think is when they give you that, that I had gestational diabetes. So that was kind of the reason for, they explained to me like that's what causes, like when you eat a big meal, your blood sugar spikes and then crashes, and that was causing me to have these like extreme fatigue moments, like where I was falling asleep like an hour after eating, like after the spike would happen. And same with the heart racing thing. Like, that was another thing they said can happen if you have like a big blood sugar spike. It can like make your heart race and stuff. So some of these things that I thought were like nothing turned out to actually make more sense when I got diagnosed with the diabetes. Yeah. So yeah, that was like the main, I guess, complication of my pregnancy, was getting gestational diabetes. It's not super common. I think it's like only about like 4 to 8% of pregnancies or something. It's not like totally unheard of, but it's not like a regular thing. Like, it does put you in like the high risk category as soon as you get diagnosed with it, and you have to go on a special diet and a whole thing. So basically I was not able to eat any sugar. Like, the diet's actually super, super restrictive. I actually looked up a bunch of videos on YouTube about like other people who had gestational diabetes and stuff like that, just to get like some ideas for what I could eat and stuff. And a lot of people said like, yeah, it's brutal. Like, it's really restrictive. It's even more restrictive than like a type 2 diabetic diet. I guess because you're pregnant, so you have to be extra careful like with everything when you're pregnant. So my diet was like, I couldn't even eat like a whole it's funny, when I found out I had diabetes, my first thought was like, okay, so like I can't have sugar anymore, like that's no big deal, I'll just eat other stuff. But it goes it goes beyond just not having sugar, because you don't realize how much carbs, which carbs essentially turn into sugar in your body once you like digest them. But how many carbs are in everyday foods. Like I couldn't eat sugar, obviously, but then I also couldn't eat pretty much any fruit because natural sugars are still sugars that will still spike your blood sugar. So I couldn't eat like bananas. I could eat apples, but I could only eat like half an apple. If I ate a whole apple, I would spike. I couldn't eat pineapple or any of those fruits. I could eat a small amount of like berries. Like berries were pretty safe. Like they were like lower in carbs, so I could eat like strawberries and blueberries and raspberries and stuff in a small portion. But yeah, fruit essentially for the most part was out. I couldn't eat bread. I couldn't eat any kind of like really bread product. Like I couldn't even eat wraps. Like I thought that was something that really surprised me with the diabetes, is I thought bread was fine. Like I was like, you don't think of bread as like sugar, but there's a lot of carbs in bread and then that turns into sugar. So I couldn't eat bread. I couldn't eat buns. I couldn't eat wraps. I tried a wrap once because I was like, oh, it's it's smaller than bread, like it's thinner, it's like less. No, it was not better. It was still bread. So like yeah, I couldn't have pitas, I couldn't have wraps, I couldn't have like any of those things. So that made it difficult for meals. Basically all I could eat was eggs, lots of eggs, lots of meat, like steak, chicken, stuff like that I could eat. And then I could eat like green vegetables, like salads and things like that. I could eat green beans, like broccoli, like those kind of vegetables. And I could eat dairy. I could have some dairy. That's the weird thing, is I could have like cheese and stuff like that because there's like a lot of protein in that, but I couldn't have like straight up milk because, believe it or not, there's actually a lot of sugar in milk products, like in cream and milk and stuff like that. So I couldn't have milk or cream or anything. I had to have almond milk, and it was like a whole thing. So that was really, really challenging. That was the biggest challenge in my pregnancy, was trying to change my diet so drastically. I literally would like cry because I was like wanting sugar so bad and just wanting normal food. Like I wanted to be able to eat like a hamburger. I didn't want to eat just like nothing with bread and nothing. It's like really a bummer. It really is. So if you're out there and you have GD, like I feel bad for you, and you're not alone, and I feel your pain because it's brutal. On top of having to do that special diet, obviously I had to monitor my blood sugar. So I would have to do the finger prick thing with like a blood sugar monitor, like every meal. I had to wait like an hour after eating and then test, and then I had to test at night, and that was not too bad. Like I was afraid at first because I was, I'm kind of a wuss, and I was like, oh, that's gonna hurt and stuff. It didn't really hurt too much, but it was just kind of annoying because I had to plan my whole day around like I have to be able to test at this time, and then I have to be able to eat at this time, and it was a lot. But for a while I was able to manage it with my diet. However, near the end of my pregnancy, like around 32 weeks maybe, like I don't know, after a couple of weeks of doing this diet, it just wasn't working anymore. I was spiking all the time, no matter what. Like I would eat like literally just like a couple of fried eggs and some veggies, and I would still get a blood sugar spike. So it was like not working. Which I guess is sort of normal, I guess, for some people. Like sometimes diet like isn't enough. So then I did have to start taking insulin shots, and that was kind of also again scary for me because like the thought of injecting yourself with like an insulin needle every night is daunting. But luckily the needle wasn't like a syringe. Like I was worried that it was going to be like a syringe and I'd have to like literally inject myself with a syringe, and it just creeps me out. But it was more like an EpiPen, so like you kind of like stick it in your thigh or whatever and press a button and it shoots the insulin into your body that way. So it wasn't too bad. It actually didn't really hurt that much. And I only had to do that for maybe a month, or maybe more than a month, maybe a month and a half or so. And then because I was on insulin, I guess there's a kind of a guideline, a rule type of a thing, where if you're on insulin for gestational diabetes, they do induce you. So you can't really wait and go into natural labor. Like they want to induce you early because it reduces the risk of like a stillbirth and stuff. So I didn't get to like, you know, have the normal experience where you're like just sitting at home waiting and then your water breaks and then like you go into labor or whatever. It wasn't like that for me. I had to go in and they used some medications to like induce my labor. So that basically takes us to the birth part, and I'm gonna do a separate video on like the birth story because that's a whole story like on its own. And I didn't have a super bad time or anything, but I don't know, I just feel like that's a lot to talk about in the same video. The pregnancy and the birth is just, it's too much. So yeah, I'll make another video talking about the actual birth process, especially because this is my, yeah, this is my first child, so like I had nothing to compare it to, so it really was like a, I guess, more memorable, like any kind of first, you know, is you're gonna remember it because it's the first time going through it, right? So it was like very interesting, and it did happen in the middle of it was December, he was born in December of 2020, so that was kind of in the middle of like the second wave of COVID, so there were like extra protocols and stuff like that, like always. So that was kind of like something that made it a little bit, I guess, unique. Like for me, I'd never done it any other way, obviously, because he was my first. Whoa, did you see that? You just sprayed the milk out of there. He's never actually done that before. That was kind of funny. Okay, let's not. But yeah, I'd never done it before, so for me it was like normal, I guess. But I've talked to some other moms and they were like, that must be a COVID thing. Like that's not like how they normally do it or whatever. So it might be interesting to like share that story in another video. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I have to say about like the whole pregnancy thing. I got super huge. That's another thing that I should mention. Like I gained like a ton of weight. Like I think I gained about 45 pounds over the course of my pregnancy because with gestational diabetes, you do tend to like gain more weight. It's just like kind of an associated thing. Like, so I have been able to, thankfully, at this point, lose the weight. I mean, he's a year old now, so it didn't happen overnight, but I was able to get back to my pre-pregnancy weight because I was like a literal beach whale for a while, like a beached whale. It was insane how big I was. Like I was literally knocking stuff, like I would like go grocery shopping and like turn and then not realize that my giant stomach had like knocked stuff off the shelves and stuff because I had like no spatial awareness of like where my orbit was anymore. So it got pretty crazy for a while and I was pretty humongous. But yeah, those are pretty much the only significant things that happened that were maybe abnormal, I guess you could say, compared to like a regular pregnancy, was just like the diabetes, the having to do the insulin and being huge. So other than that, I didn't even get too sick. Like I think there was like about a 2 to 3 week period around 15 weeks when I was kind of sick. Like I threw up a few times, but it definitely wasn't like an everyday thing. Like I wasn't throwing up every day at all. There was just, yeah, a few days that were a little bit rough, but the rest of the time I was just like low grade nauseous a little bit, and then by like second trimester it wasn't bad at all. So I got pretty lucky in that regard. But yeah, we're just about at the end of this bottle now, so I think I gotta wrap it up because he's gonna start wanting to move and go crazy. So yeah, so that's it for this video. I'll see you guys in another one to tell you like about the whole birth process and everything, if you're into TMI. But yeah, you're gonna get a lot of it in that video, so if that's not your cup of tea, then don't tune in for that one. But yeah, that's all. I'll see you guys later. All right, bye.